Hey, what's up YouTube? Welcome to my first vlog style video. I definitely normally don't do this, but this one I wanted to talk a little bit about CVMA and motorcycle racing, specifically as a new racer, and maybe I can give some tips that I learned over the weekend that might help you out if you wanted to get started racing motorcycles. The other thing is that there were also 4 races over the weekend, and I was trying to avoid posting a separate video for each one, so I figure this video will just be kind of a recap with all the highlights. However, if you are interested in the full footage from any of my races, especially if you were in my race and wanted some third-person shots, I've put all the links to my raw clips in the description. So first we'll probably just go through the races one by one, and at the end I'll talk a little bit about the whole experience. Hope you guys enjoy, and without further ado, let's get into the racing. So first race of the weekend was for the amateur Formula middleweight class, which while technically not my best finish, it was definitely my strongest race of the weekend. Unfortunately, I left my camera set up in the cabins for this one, so I'll just go over the lap times. So I was able to qualify that morning with a 1:58, which at that moment was the best time I'd ever done at Czechwalla. And that put me 4th on the grid, and I ended up taking 5th place in that race. Funny enough, I actually ran off track in my second lap after turn 2, which is what caused me to give up 4th place. But I think the breakaway between 5th and the rest of the pack was big enough for me to not really be challenged for the rest of the race. And surprisingly, I still ended up putting in a 1:59 for that lap. And on my next lap, I put in a 1:57, another personal best for Czechwalla. Super happy with the results of that race, and super happy with myself. I stayed in basically under 2 minutes the entire race. So next up was amateur Supersport middleweight, and that one I do have the footage for, so I'll let that roll.
Amateur Supersport middleweight, second call to grid, race number 9, amateur Supersport middleweight.
You ready?
Yep.
So as noted at the end of my video, my camera did not make it for the end of Sunday's last race. But when it shut off, I was currently in 6th position, and surprisingly I held that all the way to the finish. But if you recall earlier in the video, I mentioned that P5 from my first race was not actually my best finish. Well, the reason for that one is that 2 racers in front of me thought the race was over 1 lap before the checkered flag came out. I definitely remember at least one of them exiting track when it was on the final corner. I thought maybe it was a mechanical issue, and I don't think I saw the other one, so I assumed that I took a 5th place. But when I came back to the pit, my family told me that I had my best finish of the weekend with a 4th place. Even though my lap times were relatively slow, at least it was actually pretty consistent, and definitely happy with the points from a 4th and 5th finish in the amateur Formula middleweight class. Hey, I hope you guys enjoyed the footage. I said I would talk a little bit about racing and CVMA. So if I could start with maybe some advice for new racers. I forget if I mentioned, I'm a new racer myself. Been riding motorcycles for about 8 years and doing track days for, I'd say, probably the last 2 of those. So the first thing that I'll definitely say is racing is so much fun. If you're a competitive type person, when you ride on your track days, you're always trying to chase people down, for sure I would recommend getting into racing. It is definitely the most logical next step for track day riding competitively. So that's number 1 for sure. Number 2, I'd say racing is very expensive. It's not expensive as maybe you might think, but I will say this. I went into this weekend not with a brand new rear tire, and I really honestly did not expect to trash it entirely. I thought maybe I would have a track day or 2 after that, and I was going to use that used up rear for that track day. But by the time Sunday came around, the right side was completely gone, and the left side had this barely any left in it. So for sure anticipate buying a rear tire every round. My front was actually okay, but I don't know if I would use my front again. Maybe I'd take it off and use it as a takeoff for a track day or something like that. But definitely tires are going to be an expense. And altogether for CVMA in specific, I think 4 races and the entry fee came out to a little under $400. So I think $400 plus a $250 rear tire, plus the gas to get there, and these things add up. I'd call it an even $1,000 weekend. So that's number 2. And number 3 for sure is going to be cardio. Cardio. I would say just about every race that I had this weekend, the biggest limiting factor wasn't the tires. Maybe technique is in there too, but more importantly is cardio. Because when you're tired, you make mistakes. When you're tired, you can't focus on technique. You can't focus on what needs to happen during the corner. Your mind is saying something and your body doesn't follow. And I would say the majority of the fights that I had in my races, I had to throw in the towel just because being so tired was causing me to make mistakes that I wouldn't have made normally if I was fresh. So definitely important to do, be relatively in shape to go racing. Not a requirement for sure. Maybe technique can make up for lack of cardio, but cardio will help you out. And again, it's only 6 laps, but out there in the heat and all the adrenaline pumping, it gets pretty intense pretty quick. And for some CVMA specific points, number 1 for sure, get teched Friday night. Don't wait till Saturday morning to do that. That was actually my plan coming into this weekend. My wife and I left at about 2:45 from the San Fernando Valley, and generally speaking on a Friday, afternoon. It takes about 4 hours to get there, so we were expecting to get into Chuckwalla at about 6:45, 7 o'clock, and I was hoping to have the bike teched and registered by 7 o'clock or 7:30, so I didn't have to do it Saturday morning, but we ran into some crazy traffic on the 10 and totally missed tech, and Saturday morning as a result was very, very hectic. So Saturday morning, we actually rented cabins this time. Normally I bring out a toy hauler, but for this time I was bringing family, so I wanted to get a cabin for them. And I get up from the cabin, terrible sleep the night before, so I try to give myself the most amount of sleep that I could. And I got up at around, I think 6:15, got ready around 6:30, 6:45, and was at the track on the dot 6:50, so I can be first in line to get registered and tech inspected in the morning. Registration was pretty quick, and then I brought the bike over to tech, and I realized I had forgotten to do a couple safety wires on different bolts that I had cut from doing maintenance from before. So that took some time. I had to do the safety wire on the spot, and by the time everything was done and over with, it was getting close to 8 o'clock. I had to put the bike on the warmers. I didn't have my pit set up, and by the time everything was done and the bike was ready to go and the pit was ready to go, we were probably about 5 minutes out from the first qualifying session. And that is just, it's too much too quickly in one morning. I would have much rather have the bike already teched and registered, the pit already set up, and walk up to the paddock in Saturday morning ready to do qualifying without being super stressed out. So yeah, definitely make sure you get teched Friday night. Another thing for CVMA, and this probably really only applies to the hot mutts, but in general, it's always a good idea. You have a trailer or a toy hauler or something that you could take a rest in while you're sitting between races. Super helpful. I know not everybody's gonna have this. I don't have this. I use a site called Outdoorsy to rent one. It's extremely helpful, especially when it's hot. You can have the AC running on that thing. It's great. And then last one for CVMA, probably I'd say the most important one, I guess, from a competitive standpoint, is that when I went into this, I was looking at last year's qualifying times, and it looked like 2 minutes was going to be like, if you're not under 2 minutes, then what are you even doing out there? Turns out that really wasn't the case. The field was about almost 20-25 guys deep, and it seems like no matter where you are in terms of a lap time, you're gonna have a fight or a battle out there, and that's like the whole point, is to be chasing people down, making tight passes and having fun in a very competitive way. So I will say this though, if you are under 2 minutes at Chuckwalla, it's very helpful. You'll probably qualify closer to the front, but even if you don't qualify on the first 2 or first 3 rows, there's plenty of battles and fights that you can have. And if you have good race start, you could easily get to the front right away, because I know I blew multiple race starts this weekend and lost a ton of positions from that. So yeah. Anyways, that pretty much sums it up. Again, totally don't normally do this, and I don't know if I'll do another video like this, but I did want to recap CVMA round 1. Super exciting. And for all you CVMA racers, I'll see you there round 2.